Exhaust systems are frequently altered or replaced to enhance sound, aesthetic, and performance. Vehicles with illegal modified mufflers are not just generating harmful noise, they also flout pollution standards. This afternoon, our Quiet Streets program chair, Mary Tatigian, a registered nurse, will share details about her intrepid work in Collier County, Florida, to take on the problem. Mary will then introduce Lieutenant Dave Bruening of the Safety and Traffic Enforcement Bureau of the Collier County Sheriff's Office. And you'll hear how they're working within a task force to take on muffler noise and make neighborhoods in Naples and beyond quieter. As you learn, their work is a model for communities nationwide and perhaps for yours as well.
Thank you, Trish. Yes, as Trish stated, my name is Mary Tatigian, registered nurse for 30 years and lived in Naples, Florida for 40. I started Quiet Florida about 4 years ago. So I will go ahead and share my slides here. Okay, so I started Quiet Florida about 4 years ago due to the incessant noise from modified mufflers and low, loud, frequent aircraft. Seeking assistance with the problem, I reached out to Quiet Communities and eventually became their program chair for Quiet Streets. Quiet Communities, it was established 10 years ago and is a nonprofit tackling noise issues on many different levels. They have 6 different programs. Quiet Streets is their newest. Modified exhaust on vehicles are illegal. Quiet Florida today will speak about how Quiet Florida is tackling that problem. The modified exhaust creates, oops, I'm sorry, what did I do there?
I think you skipped a slide, Mary.
Okay, there we go.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. That's it. Modified, the discussion today is on modified exhaust. And if you remove the catalytic converter, you have air and noise violations. The clinical manifestations, physical and mental, as you can see on the slide here, are many. Increased noise, loud noise, chronic noise creates sleep disturbance and elevation of cortisol production, myocardial infarctions, increased heart rate, and more. Quiet Florida initially reached out on social media to like-minded folks and started a group on Facebook and Nextdoor so we could share information and hopefully tackle the problem. We also were fortunate enough to meet with Senator Kathleen Pasadomo in April of 2022, and she initiated the noise study a noise study on modified mufflers. It was almost a 42-page document stating the problems of modified exhausts, that they are illegal, and some of the solutions for that. We are still in progress of trying to resolve some of those. You should definitely develop relationships with your city, county, and statewide local officials. They are the ones that are going to help you move your problems to the forefront. Quiet Florida was fortunate enough to work with Commissioner Bert Saunders, my commissioner in my district. He brought me forward on the agenda for county commissioners, and I spoke before them probably 10 to 12 times. He then brought in the sheriff and to speak at one of the meetings. The county commissioners, then it was a unanimous vote to develop the Southwest Florida Noise Task Force. So in that task force is, as you can see, the county commissioner, Lieutenant Dave from the sheriff's office, a Naples city police officer, transportation management, and of course, Quiet Florida. We did a news media blitz on the harms of to the residents and the illegality of mufflers. Our goal is to educate and bring awareness to the problem. We used television, social media, and newspapers. And we're going to revisit again on December 12th. We're having another meeting and hopefully do another media blitz, at least on social media and the like. This slide here shows what our task force sent out to 300 different auto body shops, garages, muffler shops, basically stating the modified mufflers are illegal, the statutes, the cost of the offense, and who supports it. At the bottom of the slide, you can see all the agencies that support our agenda, or the agenda of quieting the noise of modified exhaust. Many cities are using noise cameras now. They are the new trend in US and Europe. Noise cameras can collect data. Some are using them for pilot programs right now. I'd love to have noise cameras in Florida, but again, that goes to the statutes. That's a decision made at that level. So we will be visiting legislation in January and requesting these, but a lot of states are a bit apprehensive to use them, but I find they're very cost effective and could save lives by using noise cameras. Officers don't have to chase down vehicles. They don't have to go up to a vehicle and possibly risk their lives, trying to apprehend the violator. As I stated, we were fortunate enough to speak with Senator Pasadoma a couple years ago, but we'll be going again to speak. I will speak before her on January 8th, and hopefully we're going to request the needed revisions to the 1979 modified muffler statute. The 8 steps to starting a movement in your city. We put together 8 ideas. Start a movement. We can reach out to your neighbors, reach out to those that are negatively impacted as you may be. Familiarize yourself with local regulations, the state statute and the city ordinances. Cultivate a key ally. Speak with your commissioner, your city council member. Set up a time to meet and be persistent. Present information at town meetings regarding the physical harm and the mental harms from noise pollution, as well as the illegality of modified mufflers and loud exhaust systems. Grow a network. Get your commissioners and your city council to state they will back the law that's on the books and they will protect the quality of life of residents. Always law enforcement is key, as they are the front line to the problem. And Lieutenant Dave will speak about that later. Reach out to the media. I have several media that I reach out to and text and let them know when I'll be speaking and what issues are going on. And they're happy to come and report on it. And then you get a spot on the TV, which brings more awareness to the problem. Be persistent. I've been working at this for about 4 years. We formed the task force. We have spoken to the senator. We are pushing for legislative change on the statute. So we do see change happening, but it does take time. Lieutenant Dave is going to be our next speaker. Fortunate enough to have him on board on the task force with us. He's has a long career in law enforcement. He was in the military, and he's also caring and compassionate about our community. So I'm going to turn this over to Dave.
Afternoon, everybody. Like Mary said, my name is Dave Bruening. I'm the lieutenant for the Safety and Traffic Enforcement Bureau for the Collier County Sheriff's Office here in Florida. I've been in law enforcement for about 30 years. I've seen trends pretty much come and go. And this is one of the latest that's that's kind of gone worldwide, not necessarily just statewide or even nationwide. It's a worldwide problem. I got Mary and I got together about 3 years ago and started working together. We got together, formed a plan even before the task force was put into place. And I can tell you that the sheriff and the sheriff's office is behind this 100%. We're one of the smaller agencies in South Florida, and yet we lead all of South Florida in the issuance of tickets. At least the last time I checked, which was early this year, we lead all of South Florida in the issuance of tickets for the Florida state statute that accompanies this. That statute is 316-293. What we enforce is we enforce 2 subsections in that statute. The statute has a lot of verbiage in it. Like Mary said, it's an old statute. It was brought on the books 75, I think. Is that right, Mary? It was, so there's a lot of decibel stuff in it and whatnot, and I'll touch on that. But basically, what we enforce is we enforce 5A and 5B, which I'm going to go ahead and read it verbatim. It's no person shall modify the exhaust system of a motor vehicle or any other noise abatement device of a motor vehicle operated or to be operated upon the highways of this state in such a manner that the noise emitted be emitted by the motor vehicle is above that emitted by the vehicle as originally manufactured. The second part is no person shall operate a motor vehicle. It's pretty much the same wordage, but the A is no person shall modify. The second part is no person shall operate. 99% of what we enforce is part B, because that's what we can get our hands around. The part A, we would actually have to go into a shop while they're modifying a vehicle or find somebody in their backyard while they're actually modifying the vehicle to be able to do that. And it's not really a practical part of the statute for us. With that being said, what we have, the way we do this, and it is kind of we're kind of going out on a limb here from a law enforcement perspective. We have to be able to testify in court. If we're challenged in court on this, we have to be able to testify that the vehicle was indeed modified. Some cars, that's pretty easy to do. Other cars is not so easy to do. Your little, a Honda with, a tailpipe this big coming out of the back, it's pretty easy for us to testify in court that has been modified. A Mustang that looks like every other Mustang that's extremely loud is harder for us to be able to testify to. We have been challenged in court on this, and we have lost cases. I know of one case in particular where the deputy was asked, did you get underneath the car and examine the exhaust system? Not practical from a law enforcement perspective, not practical because of many reasons, for being run over, officer safety, not being able to watch the person that you're dealing with. So we're not getting under the car to do an inspection on the side of the road. And we subsequently lost that citation. So kind of the way I handle this from my administrative side of things is I push out a lot of information to everybody within all of the law enforcement within the sheriff's office. I'll take and I will put roll calls out to them, and I'll say, hey, this is the latest what we're seeing in court on these situations. So what we're doing now is we're actually, if we can see a modification, if you can see that real big, muffler sticking out of the back of a car, we're taking a picture and we're putting that into evidence. I see this becoming a problem down the road, which is why legislation is paramount. There has to be some changes to legislation, or we ultimately will end up losing this. And I say that because here again, experience tells me that we will, because we had a statute similar to this with vehicle noise from audio devices, so people's car stereos. back when I was, many years ago when I was working the road, we had that statute, and it basically said 25 feet from the vehicle. If you could hear that, if you could hear the music from 25 feet away from the vehicle, you could charge the citation. We lost that. It went to the Florida Supreme Court. We ended up losing it about a year and a half ago. Legislation revisited it and it came back. It has been tweaked a little bit to include the language of plainly audible. But we have that citation, we have that statute back, but we lost it for years, probably close to 10, 12 years. So I say all that to say we're trying, but there are a lot of challenges to this. This is one of those things that we have to handle pretty carefully, or else we will lose the statute in its entirety. So while we're very aggressive on this, we also understand that there is a need for further legislation. That's pretty much what I wanted to say about that, about the statute. So I'll turn it back over to Trish, and we will, if anybody has any questions in the question and answer, I'll be more than happy to answer those.
Thank you, Dave. That was great. And thank you, Mary. And I'll open it up. It looks like some questions are coming into the chat, but if you have a question you'd like to ask directly, just raise your hand. Let's see. What does plainly audible mean? This language seems to often be included in noise ordinances. I don't know if I believe that'd be for you, Dave.
Well, and that's open to interpretation. So plainly audible for the statute that we currently have, it basically means plainly audible at a distance of 25 feet from the vehicle. So that's where it used to be. If you could hear it 25 feet from the vehicle, then it was a violation. They have revamped that to say it has to be plainly audible. You have to be able to discern what they're saying to the best of your ability at 25 feet. So that's kind of where this falls into play. How that would look in regards to modified mufflers, I don't know. That it's kind of hard to say, because there's certain vehicles that you're going to be able to hear them at 25 feet stock right from the factory. So I don't know how legislation can boil that all down, and hopefully they will.
Okay, thank you. And is there any merit to making noise recordings in certain situations, or is that something the community's explored?
In regards to us being able to enforce that?
I'm thinking of noise monitors and recording the noise levels.
Yeah. So from an enforcement standpoint, it's extremely hard for law enforcement to use like a decibel meter in our enforcement efforts. If we go stand on a street corner and hold a decibel meter and wait for cars to pass by, we can do that, and we have done it. We've done it with Mary. What we find is that it's not very effective, because we're waiting for that. We're waiting for that one car to come by, and we're tying up potentially 6, 7 officers to wait for that car to come by. What is more effective is what we call a wolf pack type scenario, where they're just all around the county looking for those violations. And that's the nice part about what we've established here in Collier County, is they can be out doing regular traffic enforcement for speed or seat belts or red lights or whatever, and immediately change hats to go after that modified muffler when it comes by. So we're not just have a singular focus on whatever law we're looking at. We always can divert and move into this statute, which is what we try to do. People ask me all the time, well, why don't you just ride around with a decibel meter? Well, it's hard to operate a car, pick out the car that you're trying to target, get a reading on it, and actually have, you know, the correct distance and everything. So it's just not practical. It's not safe for us to do that on a large, you know, on a scale from, you know, how we normally operate on a normal patrol environment.
That's helpful to understand. Neil, I see that you have your hand up. Rachel, can you unmute? Let me see. I think
There we go. I'm unmuted now. Mary, Trish, Lieutenant, thank you. This is really exciting. Lieutenant, question for you. I've been operating in this space for a couple of years as well. And from a layperson's point of view, can you please tell us a little bit about what it's like to be within law enforcement, and with the variety of things that you are responsible for enforcing? You know, how did automobile noise rise to the level in Collier County where it's actually getting, you know, a certain amount of your time? And are there forces at play on a national level that law enforcement is responding to? Is this unique to Collier, or maybe you can tell us a little bit about how things are prioritized?
Well, I think it boils down to Collier County. We have a quality of life that is important to our residents here, and part of that is the quietness of the community. So when Mary and the group started their grassroots campaign per se, we listened to them, because I mean that, you know, at the end of the day, we answer to our, you know, to our community, and we take what they say very seriously. So and I always say, you know, and I'm going to steal this from Mary. She always says, you know, where does their right to have fun and my right to peace and quiet end? Where do those two things meet? And it's a great question. But I believe that I believe like what Mary believes. You know, if you can't be comfortable in your own home, then why live there? So we tried it. The sheriff believes in this, and he's tasked me to put out the education to the deputies within our agency to enforce the law. We have a law. It's not a great law, but we have a law, and we're moving forward with that.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Dave. And there's a question about decibel levels and issues with them. And I think that's a question that I will have Jamie Banks field, and perhaps by email, Ingrid will get back to you. Do you just fine offenders, or do you also do a fix-it ticket on the muffler?
I can't speak for everybody in the agency. I can speak for the traffic unit. I know how they operate on a regular basis. And generally what they will do is they will write the ticket. They will write the full ticket, and they'll tell them, if you get this fixed within 30 days, call me, I'll inspect the car, and if it's fixed, I will dismiss the ticket. We have the ability to do that because I'm the one who signs the dismissal forms. So it's kind of an in-house thing we do, because our ultimate goal, our ultimate goal isn't to punish the public. It's to get that compliance. And if I can get compliance by dismissing a ticket, as long, you know, and then that's what we'll do. We've had, in the, you know, hundreds of tickets that we've written, we've had maybe 3 or 4 take us up on that. And that's usually spurred by the parents telling their teenager that, yeah, we're getting rid of that, and, you know, we're gonna, and we generally don't run into those people again. I will say, you know, for the people that say, well, what if they just go and put the muffler back on again? Completely possible. We've had one gentleman that we've issued 12 tickets to. We wrote him tickets until he basically got suspended because he couldn't pay the $613 tickets anymore. and he ended up losing his license. So if they do change it back and modify the vehicle again, we'll catch them and we'll end up writing them another ticket. So.
And what role do residents have in capturing evidence, if any? Are they just calling in noise issues, or are they engaged in any other way?
The biggest thing that can help us from a law enforcement perspective is to give us ideas of when and where. We can't, you can send me a video with a tag, and I can't do anything about that unless I am on the road and I see that vehicle operating. But if you tell me that, every day at 5 o'clock, some guy gets off of work and he drives this car through this area, that's easy. And and we do get a lot of those type of emails and calls, and that's what we try to focus on, outside of our just proactive normal patrols. And that's really where we can be helped. If somebody has, a problem neighbor or whatever, you can be anonymous. Just let us know and we'll take care of it.
Thank you. And beyond the Collier County Sheriff's Office, what is support like, more broadly in Florida? Are you getting feedback? Are you sort of sharing what you're doing?
I've spoken with other agencies. I've spoken with Miami Beach. They're actually piloting the camera system that Mary talked about. I honestly don't know. I think some law enforcement are apprehensive to charge the statute the way we are, because there is a cops like things black and white, cut and dry. This is the law. This is what you're doing. We can charge it. With this, we have to be able to come in and we have to say, you know what, that doesn't sound like a Honda that I've ever heard. So I'm going to say, in my training and experience, that is modified. And a lot of cops don't like doing that. And that's why we've worked so hard within our own agency to train the deputies that work for us that, hey, that's the way we skin this cat. Until we get better legislation, that's what we have to do to gain compliance. So to answer your question, I've heard people, other areas of the state that are basically doing the same thing we're doing. And there's other areas that they get responses back that say, well, there's nothing we can do about the modified mufflers. So, and I would challenge that.
Okay, thank you. And Mary, a question for you about, from someone who says she's less versed in the steps between statute and enforcement and legal challenges. Can you say more about the process whereby you lose the statute? Is the nature of challenge based on the enforcement process, or more like constitutionality and free speech? And then a related question would be how noise cameras might be helpful in that case.
Yeah, the first part of that question may be for Dave, but I'll speak on it. The way I understand our statute, which was written in 1979, needs to be revised in order for law enforcement to be able to effectively do their jobs. The way it stands now, it's like Dave said, it's not black and white. Noise cameras would be, I think noise cameras would be the answer. In Collier County, and I know other cities and states are very apprehensive about using noise cameras. And I really don't know why. They feel like it's an invasion of privacy, possibly the cost, but they're cost effective because they could really bring in a lot of revenue for the community. So I'm always an advocate for those, and I still will continue to push for those. So I'm sorry on that first part of the question. Dave, I don't know, can you repeat that? Because Dave may be able to answer that question with the statute and the ordinances.
Dave, do you want to repeat?
Yeah, please.
So in the steps between statute and enforcement and legal challenges, can you say more about the process whereby you lose the statute?
Well, so lose the statutes probably, it's not maybe not the most accurate thing to say. What will happen first is we'll start losing cases. The judges will just start ruling against every one of these cases that come down the line because for one reason or another. Like the one that we currently have is there's an attorney out there, and he is basically saying, did you inspect the vehicle? So if we don't have some sort of evidence to show that it was altered in some way, we're going to lose that case. And that's where things kind of start to, the attorneys, they get together and they talk, and then another attorney jumps on it and another attorney jumps on it. And then before we know it, we're losing every case. Once we start losing those cases, we don't like to lose them, so people will stop writing them. And then you'll see it go to, it can be challenged and actually go, and this is the way it went with the stereo side of it. It actually went to the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court, and they ruled that it was unconstitutional. So, and it took us a while to get that back. I doubt if it would be to that extent that we would lose it. Where we would probably lose it is we would probably lose it on a local level with the judges just saying, yeah, we're not buying this anymore.
So as far as data collection, when you stop someone, it really is all about the images that you're able to capture. And then of course your testimony. Is there anything more that you're recording that can help you?
We can try. It's hard to get an audio recording of the actual vehicle. We've thought about that, and we haven't come up with a good way to actually make an audio recording of the vehicle. So yeah, we're kind of stuck with testimony is number one. And then if we can get a piece of evidence like a picture of the exhaust pipe or something like that does show modification, because just the size of the tailpipe really doesn't mean much. But if that's modified, that's all we need. Because upstream from that, the modifications, they probably deleted the catalytic converter. They've probably, they might have even deleted the entire muffler system. So, but we won't know that. But we can see what we can see, we will capture, and we'll put that into evidence. So key is testimony. Most of our guys and girls have good testimony to move forward with these cases, and then second is the picture evidence.
So are you most often stopping cars just based on a visual sighting? I mean, I'm sure that the noise is either called in or your officers observe it, but is it just a visual?
It's usually you're driving down the road, and all of my guys and girls drive unmarked cars, so we get passed all the time anyhow. And it's usually a car will pass us that's modified, and then we'll hear it and we'll go, where is that at? And we kind of cue into it and say, okay, there it is, and then we go stop it. We do get some call-ins. Call-ins are hard. They're kind of a needle in a haystack kind of thing. When we're looking for a rolling target, basically, the ones that really help us is, the person who lives on a street corner says, every day this guy goes by. Those we can find. It's the other ones that are a little bit harder.
And is it more often motorcycles or cars or trucks? Is it equal opportunity or?
Yes, they're an equal opportunity employer. It's everything. We get the motorcycles, but we get a lot of trucks. We get a lot of I call them the fast and the furious, the little, the little cars, your Hondas and Toyotas. And those are the easiest ones, to be quite honest, because, it's easy for a law enforcement officer to walk into the court and tell the judge, Your Honor, I've never heard a Civic sound like this. I've never heard a Corolla sound like this. I've been and I testified to one just a while back, and they had an attorney, and he was asking me questions, and the judge said, Lieutenant, how long have you been a law enforcement officer? I said 29 years. He goes, have you ever heard a car like, heard a, whatever it was, I think it was a Toyota, sound like this? I said, absolutely not. And he ruled in my favor. But, it's one of those things. How long do we have that? How long do we have that luxury to testify in that way?
Neil, you have a question?
Thank you. Yeah, I want to go down the motorcycle path for a moment with you, please, Lieutenant. And this may be a little bit of a complicated question. I hope I can articulate it. It's my understanding that federal law requires that all motorcycles manufactured after a certain date, I think it's sometime in the 80s, have a stamp on the muffler stating that that motorcycle is compliant with federal EPA law. Are you familiar with that?
I wasn't familiar with the stamp. I'm familiar with that they all have to be compliant.
So that may be something I'm happy to provide it to you. I have pretty good knowledge in this area, so that may be a tool you want to know about. That if that stamp is not there, automatically that muffler is in violation, and it is something that you can see visually. So I don't want to hold up the whole group with that. I'm happy to circle back with you and Mary at another time to tell you more about that if you're interested.
Absolutely. If you can just get me that information some way, I can look into it and definitely pass that along to everybody.
That would be great, because there is a book that's a guide that Neil's referring to, and there's an actual stamp on the pipe, on the piece of equipment. So, when that's available, that would, be great when building a case.
Yeah.
What is the prevalence? This is a good question, of places where drivers are legitimately and legally can drive these cars, and are most drivers disinterested in such places? Is it less fun?
Yeah. Well, let me try to dissect that question. So first of all, you've got two different camps here. You've got the guy who has the car that he's taken the muffler off and he's running straight pipes or whatever. Then you've got the guy or gal that has a, name your supercar, Mustang, Camaro, whatever. A lot of these cars actually have a button or a dial in them that you can switch from road to track or sport. We've actually gone to all of the major manufacturers, American manufacturers, so Dodge, Ford, Chevy, and looked in the actual manual. We talked to the sales managers, got manuals, looked in the manuals, and it tells you right in the manual that if you operate this vehicle in sport mode or track mode, whatever that manufacturer calls it, it can be illegal in certain jurisdictions, because it takes the decibel level over what is legally allowed by law. So from a law enforcement perspective, we have no idea. I mean, we can hear that car, but we have no idea whether or not they're operating in track, or we have a pretty good idea that they're operating in a sport mode, but we have no way of proving that. The other guy, that's pretty easy to prove. As far as where ultimately, it would be great if they only drove these on tracks or at events where this is sanctioned, which is not on the road, but they don't. And a lot of people just hey, look at me. This is my flashy colored car that's really loud. So look at me. that's my opinion, but,
Yeah. Mary, thank you. A question for you. You talked about, sending out flyers to auto body shops. I'm
Mhm.
wondering about do you have any way to gauge the response on that? Was there follow-up? Have you heard from any of the shops directly?
Yeah, a few people posted on our Facebook page. They weren't too happy about that that they received those.
Uh-huh.
And, a couple of them, I don't care what you said, this is what I'm going to do. But as I stated, we're meeting again December 12th, because this is going to be an ongoing task force. We have to continually to check in, continue to put out, it can't be a one-off. We have to put the information back out that it is illegal, and check on these body shops as to whether we were hoping they were going to post them in their shops. But we had talked about law enforcement, but law enforcement is so busy with so many things. We had talked about possibly a volunteer force, the community police. Dave might be able to answer that, but a community police just going in and checking on, stopping in, letting them know we're checking in, we're watching you. I hope you're not violating the law, because the way I understand it, that can be quite expensive for the muffler shop or the body shop to modify a vehicle.
And they may be concerned with lost revenue. So it just seems like if there's any way to kind of facilitate discussion on that. I wasn't sure if perhaps some were happy, interested to learn about the legality.
Yeah, we'll find out more. One of our when we've done some commercials, as I said, I reach out to, there's a couple news reporters I know very well, and he did an excellent piece. And I believe I shared it, but I'll send it to you again. And he actually, a car mechanic was underneath a car, and he was talking about just that bit was really great about how they do some modifications. He actually admitted it. And I was like, oops, you better be careful. But that, what he thought on it, and what the people were requesting. So yeah, it's an ongoing thing. They have to be monitored. They need to be monitored. If you tell them once, they're going to continue to do it.
Yeah, monitored and educated. Would you say
Yes.
that's
Absolutely.
Yep. And Lieutenant Bruening, what percentage of resources do you spend on these enforcements and dealing with loud vehicles?
Well, from an actual on the road perspective, pretty much every deputy that works for the sheriff's office is aware of this. They've heard me enough. So as far as the shops go, I mean, that's hard. That is a it's I was on a call or a meeting earlier, and I've had 54 fatalities this year, just this year alone. So it's hard for me to pull half a dozen people off of actual traffic enforcement to go in and set up a sting to go in and try and, find somebody to, basically write a ticket to for modifying an exhaust. Right. Where it albeit important, I can't allocate those resources to that, because it is so time consuming. It takes a lot of people. It takes a lot of time to plan and execute. And I've got, like I said, I've got 54 souls that have died in just Collier County this year that needs to be addressed. So our mission is paramount to save lives, to slow people down. On that same meeting, we were talking about speeds. We had one speed that was 62 miles an hour over the speed limit. So that is our main concern. Those are our primary objectives. The modified mufflers, we're going to get everyone we can at while we're out there doing it, because that's what we're doing. We're out there patrolling. We're trying to make the street safe, and this is something that we do while we're doing that. So I hope I explained it. And me and Mary have had this discussion numerous times. We try to put as much emphasis on this as we can, but our main goal is to save lives.
That's an excellent explanation. I mean, that really helps us to understand.
I think the bottom line is, if we can get this statute, the 1979 statute, to say exactly what law enforcement needs, you're going to be able to enforce it better. There won't be any questions. There won't be any loopholes. There won't be any lawyers saying, oh, we can't do this. You know, we needed to say it. We need to, I was speaking to some people in Massachusetts today, and their legislative politicians aren't really eager to use noise cameras either. I'm not really sure, you know, where the holdback is on it. We need technology. Technology is the way that we're going, and it would be so much more accurate and cost effective if we use the noise cameras. But my commissioner that I work with, our commissioner, has talked about putting more resources, monies towards it. We were lucky enough to get the task force formed. So one step at a time.
And so it would seem that education would play a very key piece. I mean,
Yeah.
if there's more education, you know, and discussion around the impacts of noise, you know, which is why communities works on. So, you know, that's something we could talk about as far as resources that would take some pressure off police forces as well.
Yes, if anyone's looking to start something in their community, this is harming people. This isn't just for fun. This is actually physically and mentally causing harm to the residents. There shouldn't be any question about it, but unfortunately there is, and we have laws and there's loopholes. But yeah, I would go, that's what I did initially, was to move forward as a nurse on the harm it's causing the community. And, you know, one car can cause harm to thousands of residents in their homes as he drives along the road. So I would that's what I focused on. And it's air and noise pollution, both. I think New York City's using noise cameras successfully, and I think they have the EPA helping them because it is an air, it's the emission violation. Yeah.
And do you deal with the admissions violations in your community, or is that when you take a case in front of?
I don't know if that's, Dave, I don't know. Has that come up at all?
We don't. It's not really something that we're going to do. We don't have the equipment to be able to test the vehicle for their emissions. So no.
Someone's asking, so with a car that has a modified muffler, what other amendments to the vehicles, or what else do you see, or other defects in vehicles? Is there any theme?
Not really. Well, you know, it depends. I stopped a truck the other day, and for what I thought was a modified muffler, and he showed me a police report where his catalytic converter had been stolen. And he had ordered it and it hadn't come in and got it replaced yet. So obviously he didn't get a ticket. But so you've got the, like I said, you've got the Lamborghinis that we've got a lot of Lamborghinis in Naples. You've got them, and they'll modify them. And it's one of those things. It's so hard for us to be able to say that's modified, because I can't tell you what a stock Lamborghini sounds like, and so forth. So I don't think there is any cut and dry, we do see a lot of the car clubs, and that's where we do a lot of our stuff in the evenings, especially on weekends. We'll find out where they're parked and we'll write a bunch of tickets when they leave, because that's, I call it, hunting over bait. I mean, they're just all right there in one spot, and we'll nab a bunch of them coming out of there. They usually drive pretty bad coming out of there anyhow, so we'll usually hit them for a couple of different violations.
Yeah, that's another question is there a correlation between the modified muffler noise and sort of aggressive driving behaviors?
Can be, but then again, we see you can't paint it all with one brush, because there is not everybody who has a modified muffler drives crazy, and because there's people in minivans out there that are driving recklessly at 30 miles an hour over the speed limit. So you can't, there's not really any correlation to that I've seen.
Okay. In some states, in Massachusetts where I live, we have required inspections of our cars. So that's kind of where there's a catch on the carbon emissions. And my understanding is that Florida doesn't have that. Has there ever been consideration, or is that a daunting prospect to try to add, something like vehicle inspections, statewide?
You want that, Mary, or you want me to take it?
Well, either or, but I can just say I have talked to the senator about it, and I've talked to Commissioner Saunders. It was 1981, I believe, when they took away inspections. And I was just talking to the chief of police at Naples in Naples City. And, that was the first thing he said. Why isn't your group asking for that? Excuse me. I said, we've been asking for that for day one. That would definitely help our cause upstream. So that's another thing we're working on. I was told not to ask for too much all at once, but I said, well, let's just throw it all out there and see what we get, but inspections.
One of the recommendations from the OPAGA study was probable cause to inspect. So we don't have state inspections, but one of the recommendations, and what some other states do, is they have what's called probable cause to inspect. So how that looks is a law enforcement officer sees a car, hears a car, stops it, writes them basically a summons to so where they have to have their vehicle inspected, and then they'll go to the inspection place, and they will check for all of the emissions, make sure that the car is equipped the way it needs to be compliant. I mean, that's another route. It's probably a little bit more cumbersome than the plainly audible, but that would probably actually be more effective long term. It would just take longer to get a program like that up and running.
Right. Nancy, I see your hand up. I can unmute too. Oh, no, I cannot.
Yeah, hi. So I'm in New York City, and I see that someone actually, Janine, did make a comment on the noise cameras. I was involved in a group where we lobbied for a state law on the noise and mufflers. And so we have noise cameras, but we don't have many, and because they're quite expensive. And so they move them around. And they've worked with the EPA on this, and they've been successful, but it's limited, because what it proved is they were successful only for a certain amount of time, and then word got out that the cameras were there and nobody came anymore. So it kind of speaks to the recidivist activity of who's doing this. And we have been lobbying, to get more, but again, it's quite expensive. So again, it relies on who has the loudest voice to ask for them. But the tickets have held up, and they're expensive tickets, and they've held up in court. So I just wanted to put that out, that it has worked. It has some success.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. That's good to hear.
And Thought someone is asking, are offenders asked, I think this will be our last question, are offenders asked in court where they had their mufflers modified? Is it at garages, or are people using at-home kits?
They're not asked in court. I generally, that's usually my lead-in question is, you know, what did you do to the exhaust, and you know, where did you do it? Did you have it done somewhere or whatever? Most of them, everybody that I have spoken with has said they did it themselves or they bought the car that way. That's usually the common response, is that they bought the car that way. You know, thinking that that's going to be a free ticket out, but it is what it is.
That's great. Well, I want to thank you, Lieutenant Bruening and Mary, for joining us tonight, and all of you. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I want to urge you again to help us grow this movement, share what we're doing with your communities, and we're always happy to provide you with information. You know, have people subscribe, share our newsletters, emails, and follow us on socials. I wish you all a great evening. And I guess I'll end by saying, together, let's make the world a quieter place for all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Quiet communities.